Feminism. While much can be written about feminism, in a very general sense it has gone from a political movement for the equal treatment of women to a radical movement hijacked by Marxists to transfer wealth to women. To this end, feminism and feminists have used whatever tactics and strategies, moral or not, they can to achieve this aim. Affirmative action, victimization, sexism, misogyny, redefining rape, redefining domestic violence, diversity, male privilege, fat acceptance, shaming language, etc. A nearly endless list of political phrases, terms, and propaganda has been concocted from whole cloth for the sole purpose of creating the reason and rationale to simply steal other people's money. However, such a dishonest movement requires a huge amount of disinformation propaganda and just outright lies to keep such a legal extortion racket going. Disinformation, propaganda, and lies that ruin the lives of both men and women. Lie number 1. She can have it all. The first and arguably most destructive lie, especially for young women, is the canard that she can have it all. Have it all meaning a career, an education, children, and a husband. While for a lucky few this can be a possibility, the sad truth is there just isn't enough time in a woman's life expectancy to get a master's degree, have a successful career, have a husband, and effectively raise a family. She may be able to do all four, but she will do all four poorly. Ergo, a woman may have a great career as a highly successful lawyer, but pays a nanny to raise her children and gets divorced by the age of 42. Or the PhD candidate who finally graduates from college is forced to work until she's 40 to capitalize on her education, by which time she is too old to attract a husband and too old to bear children safely. The problem is that this lie is told to women at a very early age, starting in elementary school and reinforced throughout college. One could even claim, with shows like Sex and the City, this facade is kept up well into their 40s. It isn't until it's too late do they realize, no, you can't have it all, as their world never turns out to be what was promised to them by feminism. Naturally, this does nothing short of completely destroy the lives of millions of women. But from a male perspective, it essentially puts you dead last on their to-do list. Yeah, they might date you. Yeah, they might have sex with you. But you will always play third fiddle to their education and career, perhaps even fourth if they already have children. In the end, they'll be ready to consider you when, ironically, you no longer have an interest in them, as their 20s, and thus their best opportunity to find a spouse, are long gone. For a hilarious parody of this phenomenon, look up the YouTube video 2931 by Garfunkel and Oates. Lie number 2. She doesn't need a man. Similar to the above, some feminists will contend women don't even need men in the first place. All they need is a career, some friends, a successful social life, and boom, fish, bicycle. Even if they want children, just get in vitro fertilization. While it is technically true a woman can physiologically live on just bread and water, this does nothing to address the millions of years of genetic and biological engineering that is screaming at them to find a man and have children. It also does nothing to address the fact that humans are the most important thing in life, let alone humans of the opposite sex who can provide different and necessary forms of attention that the same sex cannot. This is why you will have the most glitzed up of party-going girls pushing every man away at a nightclub, only to go home and cry because there's no man in her life. Regardless, the lie of, she doesn't need a man, has the same effect as the lie of, you can have it all. Men are put at the bottom of the priority list, and a girl is likely more interested in her career than forming a quality relationship with you. Lie number 3. You're an independent woman. One of the biggest lies of feminism is not a lie at all, but rather how feminists have been successful in redefining the meaning of the word independent. Independent means you do not need anybody else to survive. You are self-supporting. You are not parasitical. Sadly, it has been co-opted to mean independent-minded, which has nothing to do with whether or not you are actually independent. Hypocritically, though, if you look at where the vast majority of feminists are employed, you will realize as a group they are actually quite dependent and parasitical. Nearly every women's studies department at every university relies heavily on state and federal money. Outside academia, nearly all of feminist work is non-profit, charitably relying on the donations of others. Feminism's entire political platform calls for the constant and continual transfer of wealth from others through government programs, and they beg for legislation that gives preferential treatment to women. In the end, you'll find the most independent feminists are actually some of the most parasitic people on the planet. But while blatant examples like this are easy to point out, the sad truth is the majority of female employment, feminist or not, is actually quite dependent and non-self-supporting as well. If you look at where the majority of women are employed, they are not employed as engineers making Apple products or surgeons patching up people's hearts, but are rather concentrated in industries that really produce nothing of economic value for the rest of society: government, nonprofit, and education. These industries are not only easier, but are in all honesty and reality, affirmative action programs built to provide make-work jobs for people who want to avoid difficult disciplines and industries. The elementary education industry is not about educating the children as much as it is an overglorified and incredibly expensive babysitting operation for people who can't do math. Social work is a joke of an industry that has failed miserably at solving society's sociological problems despite the trillions that have been spent on it. And HR is merely the single largest private sector affirmative action program to employ women. All of these professions are cake, taking absolutely no academic rigor to major in, and in the end produce nothing of economic value people want. Consequently, the rest of society has to pick up the extra slack, producing the food, electronics, cars, and other goods that actually have value, while these people get to delude themselves into thinking they're a self-supporting adult. But what makes it worse, and doubly rich, is these industries are not freeing women from oppressive womanly duties that kept them in the kitchens during the 50s, but merely outsourcing those same oppressive duties to other women. Daycare providers, school teachers, cafeteria workers, social workers, guidance counselors, nonprofit directors, you name it. The entire panoply of nonprofit, public sector, and education-type employees are merely doing the jobs stay-at-home mothers used to do half a century ago. All women have achieved in dominating these fields is outsource the care of their own children to other women, while they raise and rear the children of complete strangers. To add insult to injury, they now get to pay taxes as they are now compensated for work that in the past was tax-free. The problem for men, however, is the attitudes these faux careers and this faux independence imbue in women. Intolerable arrogance. They actually think they're real professionals, supporting themselves, earning their keep in society as if they were chemists or accountants. They think working 9 months a year with 6-year-olds is tough, and on par with designing electric engines for hybrid cars. Matter of fact, some even get a superiority complex as they think there is no nobler calling than working for the precious little children or the poor. But worst of all, they are so ignorant about government finances they don't realize it is you, and millions of women with real jobs, who have to pay extra taxes to create these make-work industries to keep up the facade and to shelter their egos. In the end, you can fully expect to be a petroleum engineer sitting there on a date with a young woman who won't shut up about her master's in English. She'll unconscionably tell you how people, i.e. you, don't pay enough in taxes to provide the funding she needs to get her doctorate in English. She will actually view you as inferior in terms of education because you only have a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and she'll manage to fit into the conversation just what an independent woman she is at least 4 times. Of course, her independence still won't prevent her from expecting you to pick up the check, and then you'll learn to date an accountant. Line number 4. Big is beautiful, aka the destruction of physical beauty. If you read enough feminist doctrine or websites, you will see a persistent and relentless campaign against what has traditionally been considered beautiful in women. A shapely figure, long legs, long hair, big boobs, beautiful eyes, and a comely face are all bad, all evil, and all shallow. And not only are men shallow for liking these physical traits in women, women who have these physical traits are traitors. This may not make sense to a normal, rational individual. Why would feminists care what men find attractive in women, let alone be upset if a woman had natural beauty? To answer that, you need to ask, what does the average feminist look like? The truth is, most feminists are ugly. Not because they don't have the capacity to be beautiful, but because they choose not to. They choose not to be beautiful because being beautiful requires effort. And this is the key to understanding why feminism yearns to destroy beauty. Consider all the effort you have to spend on making yourself attractive to women. Lifting weights, majoring in a tough subject, working hard, etc. Women must also expend that same amount of effort in order to be attractive to men. However, most feminists plain don't have the work ethic or temerity to put forth the effort. They simply aren't willing to commit to the effort required over a lifetime to attain and maintain their beauty. This would be fine if that's all there was to it. Feminists would not work out, not eat right, not do up their hair, be ugly, and leave well enough alone. The problem, however, is they don't. Beautiful women remind them of their ugliness and laziness, and men who pine for pretty girls simply reinforce this fact. They cannot brook the fact that there are prettier girls in the world and men apply higher value to said girls. Therefore, feminists need to eliminate female beauty and aim to do so by mocking it, ridiculing it, shaming any man who wants it, and villainizing any girl who has it. Anything to rationalize and excuse away their sloth and laziness. This is, of course, nothing short of psychotic. It's delusional. Not only do feminists think by mere shaming they can undo millions of years of evolution and biological programming in men, but think they have the moral right to tell others what they should and should not find attractive. They have gotten so insane, one of the larger initiatives in feminism today is the fat acceptance movement. Look it up. Naturally, because of its outlandishness, one would think feminism's aims to eliminate female beauty would fail miserably. However, they have been successful on 3 fronts to varying degrees. 1. They have been able to convince a significant percent of young, impressionable women to simply disfigure themselves. From the grunge movement of the 90s to today's tatted-up, tramp-stamped, lip-pierced, staph-infected trollop, feminists have convinced a significant percentage of younger women to make themselves as unattractive as possible. Gone are the days where women wore cute dresses and skirts accentuating the beauty of the campus, and in are the days where you can't tell if it's Marilyn Manson or not. Sadly, young men today pay the price as they are deprived the benefit at looking at physically attractive women. 2. While they have not convinced every woman to disregard their physical beauty, they have convinced nearly every woman that their looks are a non-vital part of attraction and that men are shallow for not liking them solely for their personality. This is not only misleading, but damaging, as the reality is a woman's physical beauty is the most important of several vital requirements for a man's long-term attraction and commitment. No matter what propaganda is disseminated, no matter how shallow women may think men are, the truth is the number one thing men value in women is physical beauty. Operating on any other premise will result in failure. Third, they've even convinced many young men there actually is something wrong with them for not finding somebody attractive solely on personality. This doesn't override the genetic hardwiring and never will, but it does cause a great amount of confusion and guilt in young men for simply being, well, normal young men. In the end, this assault against beauty causes confusion for both young men and women as it goes against their biology. But worse, any belief or adherence to it lowers the quality of women men have available to them, and lowers the quality of men a woman can attract. Also, feminists can fool themselves into thinking they too are beautiful. Lie number 5. Victimization. As per typical leftist political strategy, feminists will always play the victim card so as to beget additional government funding and preferential treatment. They will claim women are oppressed, women are beaten, women are kicked in the shins, etc., and the solution is always more government money. In the end, there is nothing complex or particularly clever about this strategy, as every ethnic and racial group has been using it since the late 80s. However, in the case of feminism, 3 key bogus statistics will constantly be touted as proof to their oppression, rationalizing a further confiscation of your money, and sometimes worse. 1. The wage gap. The wage gap, which claims women only make 75% of what men do, is actually true. Women, on average, earn only 75% of what men do. Feminists will use this as proof positive that they are oppressed and men are discriminating against them. They then go on to demand preferential hiring treatment in the labor market. The reality, however, is that women major in easier subjects, have easier jobs, work a fraction of the time that men do, and, consequently, produce only 75% of what men do. It is a statistic that has been debunked time and time again, but is still resurrected from the dead in the vain hopes it fools some of the more ignorant people. 2. The 1 in N women are raped on campus statistic. I say N because it always changes depending on which campus and which feminist you consult. Regardless of what it is, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, 1 in 2, this is nothing more than a ruse to create the illusion there is a rape epidemic on campus and the women's shelter, once again staffed by unemployable women's studies majors, needs more taxpayer money to fight this plague. Sadly, more government money is the most noble of their motives, because for whatever sick sadistic reasons, some feminists are so filled with hate for men they've gone to the extent to redefine rape, rendering sex a very risky proposition for most men. If a girl was drunk and couldn't remember, it's rape. If a girl was peer pressured and really didn't want to, it's rape. If a girl just didn't like you afterwards, it's rape. Some feminists claim all sex is rape. What feminists consider rape, however, is not the real threat. It's the risk of a false accusation of rape. And with such diluted definitions of rape, more girls are incented to make false rape accusations, especially with the encouragement of feminists. Incredulous and disgusting as this might sound, it is a risk you cannot afford to ignore, as a false rape accusation will wreak an incalculable amount of damage upon you. Besides, if you still don't believe this happens, all one has to do is look up Antioch College's infamous sex policy, or look at the sheer number of young men being falsely accused of rape to see this is a very real and very serious threat. 3. Women earn the majority of college degrees. This is not in the genre of victimization, but is thrown out there in conjunction with the wage gap statistic to show just how oppressed they really are. Why, if women are earning the majority of degrees, then it's even more insulting they only make 75% of what men do? It is also thrown out there to make men feel ashamed they are getting beat by women in academic performance. The reality is that, yes, women earn the majority of college degrees, because the majority of degrees being awarded to women are in worthless humanities and liberal arts fields. Nearly 2/3 of worthless degrees are awarded to women, while 80% of engineering degrees go to men. In short, it doesn't take anything to get a degree in 15th century French lesbian poetry studies, while it does take infinitely more rigor to get a degree in computer engineering. The intended goal of these 3 bits of disinformation is not only to attain victim status, but also to get women to distrust men and view them as the enemy. They are the oppressors. They are all potential rapists. They are abusers. You combine that with idiotic concepts like male privilege or rape culture, and impressionable young women can be led to believe men are actively, consciously, and purposely oppressing women. At best, such propaganda makes dating much more difficult than it already is. At worst, it can ruin a young man's future with a bogus rape claim. There are certainly more lies and bits of deceit on the part of feminism, but understand what feminism is and the consequences it has for your interactions with women. It is a political movement that aims to use women as a means to absolve themselves from as much work and responsibility as possible. It paints women as victims, oppressed by men who need more and more government money and intervention to make things right. Ironically, however, it causes just as much damage to women as it does men, because it lies to both about the realities of each other. Women are led to overvalue and overestimate themselves, as well as ignore the desires and realities of male sexuality, thereby severely impairing their chances of ever finding true love and having a successful family life. Also, feminism wreaks havoc on men, as their propaganda not only lowers the overall quality of women for men, but increases men's taxes, increases their chances of divorce, ruins dating, makes sex a legal risk, and lowers their chances of having a stable, sane, enjoyable family life. While such an evil and vile political movement should fool no one, sadly, it has made significant inroads by playing off of the naivete and ignorance of young women. Therefore, it is important, not just for your success, but for your safety and sanity to be able to identify feminist thought in women, avoid it, and if necessary, disarm it.